that mic. And then
Testing, 1, 2. Do you hear anything? Sound check, 1, 2, 3. Sound check for the court reporter, A, B, C. 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. What number are you on?
agencies brief congressional committees on programs in private nearly every day. However, for this particular program, I believe it should periodically happen in public. A lot has happened since May. The Office of EHRM has mostly taken shape. VA formed councils of healthcare providers to vet the Cerner EHR and its workflows. Cerner has begun traveling to the initial implementation sites in Spokane and Seattle and has assessed their readiness. Cerner has studied the suitability of military health system Genesis, the Defense Department's Cerner EHR, as the baseline for VA. And VA has begun infrastructure upgrades at the first medical centers. At some point next year, implementation will begin in earnest in Spokane and Seattle. The structure is mostly in place, but there is an enormous number of dots to connect. High-level organizational questions are still not settled. The workflow councils have a series of meetings spanning much of next year in which to hash out how the system should be configured. VA has over 1,200 distinct decisions to make, often necessitating coordination with DoD. The infrastructure upgrades, many of which will entail digging trenches and ripping out walls, will need to line up with the implementation schedule. Practical problems, from the mundane to the esoteric, will undoubtedly arise. VA has already run into some. For example, nearly all of the computers in Spokane and Seattle are reportedly incompatible with Cerner and are being replaced. We are moving into the middle of the beginning. VA has outlined the program, identified the next steps, and generally called out the dependencies and risks. What comes next is detailed plans and schedules. Only then will we truly know what to expect and what VA has bought. I would like to take this occasion to address some persistent questions and clarify some jargon. First, community provider interoperability has always been the elephant in the room. VA-DoD interoperability is very important, but VA is much farther behind in exchanging records with its community partners. There are many helpful tools like health information exchanges, but no out-of-the-box EHR system completely solves this problem. No matter which EHR VA selected, more work would be needed to achieve interoperability with community health systems. VA has been actively grappling with this challenge for over a year now. The delays in awarding the contract were a result. Now, some of the media see the, quote, Mar-a-Lago crowd behind every unexplained or unfavorable development. I can't speak to that. What I do know is that community interoperability is a very real problem, and for $16 billion, VA had better solve it. The result of months of reviews by some of the best experts money can buy was language written into the contract concerning data standards, data rights, and future obligations of Cerner to advance interoperability. Not quite an answer, but paths to an answer. It all means nothing if VA and Cerner do not follow through, though. I am not ready to sound the alarm yet, but I have heard very little about this subject since taking on this role. I have expressed my concern about what seems to be a loss of focus on innovation. Secondly, there was a spirited debate between VA and DoD about what, quote, single common system, end quote, means. As the debate progressed, it became clear that their ability to interoperate seamlessly hinged on it. Some thought it meant both departments merely need to install the Cerner EHR or perhaps the same version of the EHR. That is apparently not enough. In the industry jargon, they must have a single instance. That means both departments have to pull their patient data from the same database, which means the two implementations have to be joined at the hip. It raises the stakes. It is important to put this reality out in the open and early. Thirdly, I expect there will be a lot of discussion this morning about standardization. That means VHA eliminating needless variations of how different facilities deliver care. It is a goal throughout healthcare, but not all standardization is the same. I am concerned VA may not be standardizing against any well-defined goal, instead standardizing by default. It is not possible to accommodate what every single doctor and nurse wants, but the people running the EHRM program need to understand what they want and why. Relatedly, I expect to hear the term Cerner best practices. Cerner best practices means out-of-the-box standard EHR functionality. More best practices mean fewer variations. Finally, we are going to discuss risk. Some risks are specific to this particular EHR transition. However, other risk, probably more risk, would be the same regardless of the EHR system chosen. The fact is, unwinding Vista is much more difficult than installing any EHR in its place. I have high expectations, though, for the VA. I believe in transparency and reality. Frankly, the more I have learned about the EHRM program, the more daunting it has become. But this discussion inevitably becomes about doing anything or doing nothing. Doing anything is hard. Doing nothing is easy. With that, I yield to Ranking Member Lamb for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have many questions, but no opening statements, so I will yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. I would now like to welcome our first and only panel who are seated at the witness table. On the panel, we have the Executive Director of the VA Office of Electronic Health Record Modernization, Mr. John Wyndham. He is accompanied by the office's Acting Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Laura Krupa, and its Chief Technology Integration Officer, Mr. John Short. Additionally, we have Mr. Travis Dalton, President of Cerner Government Services. I ask the witnesses to please stand and raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you, and let the record reflect that all witnesses have answered in the affirmative. You may take a seat. The subcommittee has asked Mr. Dalton to be present to answer members' questions, not to present a formal statement. Therefore, Mr. Wyndham will present the only opening statement. Mr. Wyndham, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member, Congressman Rowe, thank you for joining us as well. Good morning, Chairman Banks, Ranking Member Lamb, and distinguished members of this subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the status of the VA's efforts to modernize our electronic health record, or EHR. I am accompanied by Dr. Krupa, the Office of Electronic Health Record Modernization, or OEHRM's Acting Chief Medical Officer, and Mr. John Short, OEHRM's Technology and Integration Officer. First, I want to take time to personally thank each of the members of the subcommittee for your continued support and shared commitment to the program's success. Because of your ongoing support, VA has been able to adhere to the implementation schedule while being a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars. As you are well aware, VA's current EHR system, Vista, is unsustainable and cannot deliver critical capabilities to meet the evolving needs of the healthcare market. Through the EHR modernization effort, or EHRM, VA is working to provide veterans with access to a complete medical record by adopting the same EHR solution as DoD, allowing patient data to reside in a single hosting site using a single common system. This will enable the seamless transfer of health data as service members transition from active duty veteran status to allow us to leverage an existing commercial solution to achieve interoperability within the VA, between the VA and DoD, and between VA and community care providers. VA's multi-year implementation strategy will evolve as technology advances. It includes deploying the solution at initial operating capability sites to identify problems and correct them before deploying to additional sites. As challenges arise throughout the deployment, VA will work swiftly to mitigate potential impacts to veterans' health care. Since VA provided testimony on EHRM before the full committee on June 2018, VA has accomplished several key milestones I want to highlight. First, VA awarded 3 additional task orders that include data migration, enterprise interface development, functional baseline design and development, and IOC deployment. Secondly, in June 2018, VA established OEHRM to provide oversight to the implementation. The office will ensure VA successfully deploys and maintains the new EHR solution and the health IT tools dependent upon it. Additionally, in July 2018, VA and Cerner conducted a current state review at VA's IOC sites. This provided VA with details of each site-specific as-is states and how it aligns with commercial standards to implement the proposed state. Furthermore, because VA is committed to closely aligning its workflows with commercial best practices, it commissioned Cerner to complete a baseline assessment of how closely DoD's EHR solution aligns with these practices. Cerner provided VA with the analysis in September of 2018, which revealed DoD's new EHR is in general in alignment with commercial best practices. Also in September, VA held its model validation event, where it began the national and local workflow development processes for the new EHR solution. During this event, there were a series of working sessions designed to examine Cerner commercial recommended workflows against VAs. This enables VA to configure its workflows to best meet the needs of our veterans, while also implementing commercial best practices. Finally, VA established 18 EHR councils, primarily comprised of clinicians in the field, to enable the configuration of national standardized clinical and business workflows. To ensure the appropriate VA and DoD coordination, there remains an emphasis on transparency throughout the integrated governance, both within and across VA. At an interagency level, VA and DoD are committed to institute an optimal organizational design that prioritizes accountability and advances synergy between VA and DoD. The departments established an interagency working group which meets regularly to review use cases and collaborate on best practices to ensure interoperability objectives are achieved between VA and DoD. By learning from the DoD, VA is able to proactively address challenges and further reduce potential risk at VA's IOC sites. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my opening statement. I am happy to answer any questions that you or the members of the subcommittee may have, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Sir, I want to add some additional remarks with my time. There's been a number of articles posted. I look forward to answering whatever questions or concerns that you have regarding those articles. I just want to remind you, Chairman, you're a naval officer. I've served 34 years in the Navy. I have performed on teams. I have supported teams. I've led teams. We are building a team in VA. I have an uncle, Wendell Davis, who just entered into hospice in the VA, St. Louis Medical Center, has about 10 days left. This is not only personal, it's important to our veterans, which I am one of. We remain committed to fulfill the objectives of the VA and what you've charged us to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Windham. I'll begin the questioning. Mr. Windham, let's begin with the budget and the cost estimate. Please let me know if I have the following facts correct. As a result of the Cerner contract being awarded later than planned, you had a $205 million unspent in fiscal year 2018. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So with the infrastructure upgrades, will they proceed more gradually than originally planned? Is that correct?
What we're seeking to do, and I've got my Chief Technology Officer here with me, and he can respond in greater detail. What we're seeking to do is ensure that we balance the implementation appropriately of our infrastructure readiness plans, such that we are not too far out in front of ourselves with regards to user adoption. The last thing we want to do is invest and then something become obsolete. So our timing is critical. So the answer to your question is, we've got an infrastructure plan that will support our implementation objectives with the proper timing, sir. Over.
Got it. So because of that, compared to the original November 2017 estimate, you are now forecasting $214 million less in fiscal year 2019 and $236 million less in fiscal year 2020. So conversely, in later years, the infrastructure costs will run slightly higher than originally estimated, altogether about $204 million more through fiscal year 2027. Would you say that's correct? So I need you to help me on this one. In spite of all that underrun, your total estimate over 10 years went up, has already gone up before any real work. actually begins. So by about $350 million, from roughly $15.8 billion to $16.1 billion. How can that be?
When we originally briefed you on that 10-year life cycle cost estimate, we in no way included the VA government employee cost. We made that clear with the asterisk noted in our original estimates. Those estimates for the support we need from a VA employee requirement are now included in those estimates. So what you're looking at primarily are employee staffed salary numbers.
Got it. That's what I thought you would say. So I find it hard to believe that such a basic part of running the program, government salaries, could have been overlooked. But even if I accept that at face value, it's an enormous amount of money. So if we figure they are senior GS-15 employees, which I understand many of the folks in your office are, and we include their cost of benefits, $350 million buys roughly 2,000 full-time employees. Now, there are less than 300 people working in the EHR modernization office. So am I mistaken here? What am I missing?
Sir, $350 million, by my simple math, equates to about $35 million a year over 10 years. We were very much upfront as we executed the strategy associated with the DNF that we were not taking the time to fully calculate the VA employee costs during this time frame in order to move aggressively toward our goal of awarding the contract. What we have recently come back to you with is what we think are some very reasonable numbers with regards to program employee requirements, approximately 269 overall government employees. And so, you know, the expertise that we need, I've said before in the previous hearings, we've got to have physicists to grade physics tests. We have to have highly qualified subject matter experts to grade the implementation efforts of Cerner. Those people in the industry cost money. And so we will continue to be judicious with taxpayers' money. We hope through efficiencies learned through IOC, we will drive down those costs. But what I provided you is a realistic estimate such that we can plan accordingly.
All right, I appreciate that. But let's explore another explanation for this budget increase. You are now estimating that the project management office support cost will go up between $50 and $90 million every year through fiscal year 2027. That comes out to about a $583 million increase over the life of the project. These are the contractor costs to staff your office, principally a contract with Booz Allen Hamilton. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
So the Booz Allen contract is already in place for a period of 5 years. Is this a big increase to the Booz Allen contract, or are we talking about even more support contracts?
Sir, the numbers that you're looking at are intertwined. There is no distinguishing. Our number remains for the life of the contract in support of Booz Allen support, approximately 120 to 125 million. The numbers that you're seeing are support of executive councils, workflow management and development processes, alignment processes, and also effectively a satellite command activity we're going to need to have in the Pacific Northwest. The numbers, again, are what we know today. The great thing about IT is it continues to evolve. There are going to be efficiency gain that we just can't forecast at this point. We will be looking at those numbers very keenly, very astutely over the coming years to ascertain whether the budget requirements have remained the same or we need to adjust accordingly. There's advancements in technology that are forthcoming that we expect to drive down those numbers, but what I wanted to give you was an honest perspective, sir, and that's what I've given you.
Thank you. My time has expired. I yield 5 minutes to the ranking member, Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Krupa, welcome, first of all. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the workflow councils. Can you just kind of describe to me in layman's terms your understanding of how those are going to work and the clinician involvement?
Certainly. So we've formed 18 clinical councils. Each of those councils are centered around a type of clinical care. Is that better?
You're fine.
Okay. A type of so we have a provider council, we have a nursing council, laboratory councils. There are different clinical themes. Each of those councils have a mix of field staff and central office staff. Basically, 60% of the folks on these councils are folks who see patients, who are out in the medical centers, but we also have central office staff who understand national policy and direction. These councils have been meeting on a weekly basis for several months. They attended the model validation event in September, and they just got back from the first workshop in Kansas City, Workshop 1.
Okay, and after the councils, so you're saying they meet every week?
They meet by phone, virtually.
And after that, what happens to the information that's exchanged? I guess who is that information flowing to?
So there's each council has an administrator, a project manager. There's folks from Cerner that are also part of those meetings. So after the first workshop, they all got together in a room. They made decisions. They got educated on the system, and they have a whole set of activities that they are going to be doing over the next 6 weeks in preparation for the next workshop. So they have different sprints where they talk about a certain type of activity, and then they have their input into that, and then they come back and refine it till everybody is satisfied with the output of that work. So they have a series of 8 workshops total that they will be doing over the course of this next year.
And in those workshops, what is it precisely that they're talking to each other about? Are they looking at EHR examples, or are they more talking about their existing workflow? Or what?
So the workshops are led by Cerner staff who present them with Cerner best practices, and they have a set of decisions that they have to make. In fact, I think we know that we have 2,760 decisions to make over the course of these workshops. And then there's a tool that they use to track all the decisions that are made, so that is what leads to the configuration of the electronic health record. And in these councils, we also have included Department of Defense staff to help us understand the decisions that they've made and the experiences they've had, and bring that knowledge into the room.
Okay, and are the councils full? Like, do you have full participation right now, or?
Yes, in fact, we are very engaged, very enthusiastic staff, and really we filled up the Cerner room when we were there for the workshop. So there is no problem with getting our clinical staff involved, and we have a list of folks who are waiting to be rotated in.
And are the clinical staff, are they clinicians from the 3 test sites, or are they just from everywhere in the VA system?
They're from everywhere in the VA system, but Vision 20, which is the IOC sites, has a representative on every council.
Okay. And those 18 councils, are they divided kind of by like subject area? Is that what you're saying? So
Correct.
nursing, yeah, okay, got it. All right. Mr. Dalton, can you just describe for me, if you know, the information coming out of these councils that is then being taken by Cerner? What is Cerner doing with that sort of on a weekly, monthly basis at this point?
Certainly. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity to be here on behalf of Cerner.
Sure.
It's an honor and a pleasure to do that. I've led our government business since 2011, so I've had the opportunity to be along for the entirety of the journey with DoD and VA, so appreciate the opportunity to be here. The other thing I would note related to the councils was that there's also outside representation from leading academic and other institutions, so these are not just Cerner points of view and inputs. We're getting a variety of inputs from a multitude of folks across the industry that use different systems. I think that's important to note. We welcome that input as part of this process.
Do you have some examples of the institutions involved?
I think some of the leading institutions, Dr. Krupa.
I know we have folks from Yale as one institution. We have some of the bigger healthcare systems that have implemented Cerner across the country are also part of it.
Got it.
Yeah, and those
My time's up. We can come back to this in another round. I don't want to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The chair recognizes the chairman of the full House Veteran Affairs Committee, Dr. Phil Rowe.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry Mr. Kaufman and I didn't get the memo on the striped tie this morning. The rest of you have on. I know how strongly, you know how strongly I feel about the EHR modernization and what a priority it's been for us in the committee and for patient care. It means a great deal of scrutiny for the VA leadership, and a few years ago that scrutiny would have probably been decidedly unwelcome, and they would have been not shy about telling us so. But to Secretary Wilkie and his team's credit, they've been engaging with the subcommittee constructively. And I told the Secretary, I said, if we don't get this right, you and I need to go on the witness protection program, and I hope they hold a couple of spots for us. I've been watching this, the EHR modernization plan to come together the last year and a half, and during Secretary Shulkin's tenure, there was an intensive look at interoperability. And I expressed my concern about transferring all patient data, and that became obvious when I was at Spokane a while ago. It seems to have worked, VA seems to have worked through those issues and understands what capabilities Cerner provides out of the box and what additional work will have to take place. But this by no means is interoperability with the community providers, and we know that's not easy. Again and again, we turn to a basic question like how the VA system will be situated with respect to MHS Genesis and how the clinical standardization is going to proceed. I'm a little uncomfortable about that. Ideally, those questions would have been answered first. That being said, as long as they are thoroughly and transparently answered before Cerner starts installing the EHR in Seattle and Spokane, the situation should be manageable. Now, Dr. Cooper, typically, after EHR implementation, the medical practice suffers a large productivity hit. I know when we put hours in our office, the way we solved that problem was the doctors just stayed late at night entering the data, well into the night. And we know there's about a 40 or 50% temporary reduction in efficiency and capacity. That's pretty normal. There have been discussions at the VA about designing the Cerner implementation to limit the productivity hit to 10%. Do you think that's possible?
Well, I agree that that is one of the biggest things that we need to consider as we look forward here. We are looking at all the different possibilities in terms of what the percentage will be. We're making active plans to mitigate the loss in productivity that will occur during training and go live. We have a committee that is headed up by VHA that is looking at various strategies. Some of the things we're looking at are using our telehealth capacity to see patients. So while the folks that are at the IOC sites are getting trained and getting used to the system, we're looking at bringing in temporary staff to help see patients while the staff at the sites are also involved. We're looking at how we can use the community resources if there's a decrease in capacity, a variety of mitigation strategies. And we also have a very, very robust change management and training strategy so that staff will be able to quickly get accustomed to the record and be able to regain their productivity quickly.
I've been warning VA groups when I go to see them that this is going to happen. We already have a shortage of staff at the VA, medical staff. This is going to be a big hit for the Spokane region. We know what happened in DOD. We've already at Medford. We know what's happened there already. So I think that's something we have to plan for. And I hope you are doing that. And I just wonder how you're going to be able to do that, whether you're going to. And the other thing I want to know is that from DOD to VA to Mr. Lamb's questions, what have we learned from there that's transferable? And maybe, Mr. Dalton, you can answer this to VA, because, and the other part of the question is, I know the people, I know when we put it in our own office, but implemented it, the people implementing it knew very well. But are you getting the information out to the worker bees, the people actually going to be using it at the site? People implementing it will know very well. They'll have had weeks and months and maybe a year or so of training on it. But the person actually doing the care and the nurses and the doctors, are they going to be brought up to speed in time to do this? Because this is a big process you're going through.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate the question. Yeah, we learned some hard lessons with DOD. There's no doubt about that. I think transformation is always hard and it's always difficult. We're doing a lot of things differently here. So we're engaging with the sites early and often. So one of the things that we've done is a current state review and assessment. That's an activity here we didn't do with the DOD. We're also doing 8 workshops So we're doing more workshops up front. We're doing more of an iterative process where we're getting regular design review and we're making sure that it's understood what those decisions are that are being made. This is a provider-led process. We have 18 councils with a variety of input. They're also assisting us, to the earlier question, with validation of workflow done to date by the DoD, new workflows that we need for VA, and then they're assisting with validation of those elements. And then several other things too, sir, around training. We've created 100 to 400 level courses for the VA based on workflow, not based on just the function that you serve, but based on the workflow, the entirety of the workflow. We've got a VA play domain that we're introducing that will allow folks to get in early and have access and a better understanding. And then Cerner will be providing the help desk support direct and also ongoing sustainment in the VISNs and at the VAMCs. So
Let me give you one.
Yes, sir.
I know my time's expired, but I want
Yes,
to
sir.
say one other thing before I finish is that what you have to make this implement and work correctly is that when a provider is sitting there at a computer screen, and I've been there, and you hit the blind canyon, you don't know where to go, you're stuck. You can't call 1-800-HOLD. You've got to have somebody immediately available to be able to access you to get you through that. And I would encourage you, if you don't do anything, that will stop a lot of the decreased productivity, is just having somebody get stuck and they don't know where to end up. I yield back.
yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Rowe. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you, Mr. Wyndham. In part, you've answered this, but I want to go into a little bit more detail. $350 million cost estimate increase this early in the project is clearly bad news. I get that it's the 10 years. Cost increases tend to lead to more cost increases. If you have more cost increases down the road, is VA going to ask Congress to appropriate the additional amounts or do more internal reallocations to take it out of other accounts?
Sure, I'm more than sensitive to cost schedule and performance. I couldn't have been more clear 19 months ago when we offered our estimate and then refined it, that it did not include the cost of VA government employees. We are staffing 18 councils. We were also required to go back and pay our bills back to October of 2017, generated by the EHR program, in reimbursing VHA activities as well as OINT activities that supported us. So again, this is a moving target, extremely dynamic environment. What you can count on me to do, sir, is be transparent with you. We have given you projections over the next 10 years. We hope that efficiencies are gained as part of discoveries at IOC, and we will continue to refine. One of the reasons that our projected numbers of a 700-person OEHRM have come down to 269, because I value leveraging the existing resources that are present in the VA today. I have a great relationship with VHA. I have a great relationship with OINT. They have tremendous expertise that they can bring and provide at our disposal. We will be leveraging that to the maximum extent. The more we can utilize that, the more that bill comes down, because those are resources that are already in place, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Wyndham. I've got confidence in you. I don't have confidence in the structure. I think the notion that we're still at the point where neither DOD or VA is taking the lead. And I think that one of them has to have ownership for it. One of them has to call the shots. The notion of having this intermediate organization between the two, these two behemoths, these two gigantic entities, I think at the end of the day is just unworkable. And I would like you to comment on that.
Yes, sir. I mean, my military background has been revealed. I am an organizational chain of command person. I understand a single person in charge. That single person in charge is the DepSec. Secretary Byrne is in charge of this activity. Between DOD and VA, one thing I can assure you is that Secretary Wilkie has challenged us daily to look at opportunities for efficiencies between the two agencies. And also, the joint statement that he and Secretary Mattis released, reaffirming their commitment to our jointness, our interoperable objectives, is evident throughout our processes, and I feel very good about the working relationship with DOD, and we're going to be looking to gain greater efficiencies as we work the various challenges that we will encounter, sir. I recognize and understand your concern.
But wouldn't you agree that the reason for that the fact is that the problems with the failures in the past were that you had these two entities with no one in charge, and they simply couldn't come to an agreement?
Sir, I spent 33 years in the Navy. So my experience within VA and the history of VA is very limited. What I can tell you over the past 20 months is we've succeeded at every milestone that we've encountered or desired to achieve. And so I've seen nothing but unity in pursuit of this mission amongst the entities that are alleged to be fractured over the years. They have come together. I don't know if it's the stars aligning, but the stars have aligned. I feel the momentum. You folks have paved the way with regards to your support, the VSOs. Everyone is on board that this is something that needs to be done. I think that it's important to have disagreements and healthy tension because that's what keeps us on our toes. That's what keeps us from entering into groupthink, and that keeps us in support of our veterans and moving in the right direction.
Well, I thank you for the service as someone, an Army Marine Corps person here. I thank you for your service to the country. You mentioned that there was an allegation that these organizations were fractured. I think it's more than an allegation. I think they, in fact, were fractured, and I hope that's not the case today. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Bergman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Probably there hasn't been a VA hearing that I haven't asked the question of the witnesses, do you feel a sense of urgency in your organization? I'm not going to ask that question today. I'm not going to ask it probably ever again, because I'm just going to say, show me where the sense of urgency. Give me examples. Give our committee examples, if you will, of the sense of urgency for this. You hear about cost overruns. You hear about delays. You hear about entities not working together. There's always going to be some of that. I guess what I'm looking for as a committee member here, subcommittee member, is to have you build our confidence that we're actually going to see results. Okay, build our confidence, because when we go back to the district, and I go back to my district, I mean, if I had 10 interactions today in the district, probably 5 of them are VA related, and usually it's involving healthcare. But the point is, for now and future, it's going to be show us that sense of urgency. Is there any reward for those participating in the project to achieve results? Is there any reward, financial or otherwise, or promotion?
Sir, neither the Booz Allen contract is a time and material contract, so there's no incentive other than the profit associated with that contract. The Cerner contract is a IDIQ contract where there's no additional incentive outside of the profit that has been negotiated. What I can tell you is that the partnership, sir, we talk all the time amongst ourselves about going into VA medical centers and the VA facilities. That's a heck of a reward in seeing what we can do in the way of improving patient care in that arena. So really, I don't think you'll find anybody at this panel or most people in the VA, they're not doing it for the financial windfall. They're doing it because the ability
Well,
to
let me
Yes, sir.
cut to the point, because it's okay if there's no reward. Is there any threat to anybody's jobs if it doesn't work?
Sir,
Yes or no?
Sir, the threat would be to my job because I feel I'm the accountable person to the DepSec. And
But
so,
you have milestones in your job. If you don't meet them, you're relieved?
sir, I have an evaluation that I am required to complete, and I am graded every year on my performance. So my performance is constantly being graded. I serve at the pleasure of Secretary Wilkie,
Okay.
as I did of the President.
All right,
So
well, let's
that's
get in.
how I feel.
Okay, well,
Yes, sir.
I'm curious, because we either, if we don't incentivize good behavior, we're not going to get it, and if we don't hold people accountable for their actions, and you've chosen a responsible position, and people who lead, lead, and if they, in the military terms, if you're not doing the job, you're relieved of command. I mean,
Yes, sir.
in simple terms, and it gets a little gray when you get outside of the military when it comes to performance, resignation, movement upward, whatever it happens to be. But that's in specific, and this is for either you, Mr. Wyndham, or Mr. Dalton. What have you found in your readiness assessments of the Spokane, Seattle, and American Lake medical centers? How much will it cost in money and time to resolve the findings and prepare the facilities for the EHR to be installed? Because that's our beta site, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what's the numbers?
Sir, we've got full infrastructure plans that we just presented to the staff yesterday, as a matter of fact, that we can give you a full laydown of costs associated with infrastructure. I will tell you, the term I use is our CSR has revealed no showstoppers, and I'll let Mr. Dalton comment on that. What I mean is, when they went out to our respective sites, they saw the similar and same deficiencies that they've seen in their commercial implementation. So we feel very comfortable that we have a path to success. So I'll let Mr. Dalton comment on the remainder of that.
Yeah, I think we were pleasantly surprised by the impetus for change. So there are a lot of folks that were glad to see us and want this change. I think that VA is unique and it's different. So there were some areas we uncovered that we need to focus on now. Telehealth, behavioral health, reporting. Those are big areas, big content areas, unique patient population. We wanted to know that now. That's why we went.
Okay, see, my time is up.
Yes, sir.
Again, you can take the question for the record. How much time and how much money? For the question I asked in specific. How much will it cost in money and time to resolve the findings that you have? That's
Sir,
for the record. My time is
Oh, yes, sir.
has expired, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The committee will now begin a second round of questioning, and I will begin with this. Mr. Wyndham, on September 26, Secretary Wilkie and Secretary Mattis issued a joint statement that promised a new and improved organizational structure to manage EHRM and MHS Genesis. When will this be announced, and what have you so far ruled in and ruled out as part of that structure?
Sure, I would offer nothing has been ruled in or nothing has been ruled out. The undertaking that you described is a complex undertaking,
Then will you at least commit to briefing the subcommittee before you institute any organizational changes?
Sir, I don't speak for the Secretary, but the Secretary would not take exception to that briefing whatsoever. So after the appropriate assessments are done, I welcome the opportunity to come back and tell you what has transpired.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm sure that you're aware there was a media report recently that the DoD examined the possibility of taking over VA's EHRM program, but the lawyers determined DoD lacks the statutory authority to do so. VA must have been aware of that discussion. You came from DoD, so I'm sure that you have many relationships there. Do you confirm that DoD considered a takeover, or do you deny that?
Sir, I know of no such attempt. The VA has been on a course that we have not wavered from since the signing of the DNF back in June of 2017. I have been either the lead or the deputy for that entire period of time, and no such proposals were broached with me whatsoever.
So, Mr. Wyndham, in my opinion, a complete takeover by one department would be very risky. That being said, further integration is probably inevitable given the nature of the single Cerner instance. My concern is that VA and DoD align what makes practical sense, not what serves a bureaucratic interest. What functions do you think should be managed jointly?
Sure, I think there are a myriad of things. I can give you a few, but there's differences that we still have to assess. So I think from a VA perspective, we are very much in line with your thoughts. An assessment has to be done as to what inhibitors or challenges may exist. There are efficiencies we can gain immediately: cybersecurity, system engineering architecture that revolves around data hosting, where we are putting our data in the single enclave, URLs, which we already have gained a success because we have a united commitment with DoD to use the same URL. We just got PKI certificates issued for that URL. So there are a number of things: joint patient identity management, Sir, what we'd like to do is come back to you in total and brief you on areas we think efficiencies can be gained sooner rather than later. I can tell you that the VA's mission set is different. We've got 30% more capabilities to deliver as part of our clinical requirements. And those are things that we have to apply effort to as well. So we understand the differences, but the sameness, if you will, but we're solidifying what the strategies could be or should be to capitalize on those prospective efficiencies.
Okay, appreciate that. Let me shift gears a little bit. Mr. Wyndham, I still don't understand why Seattle and Spokane were chosen as the initial implementation sites. As you know, I've visited them. Other than that, because DoD had already chosen nearby sites. Early on, the committee advocated for the James A. Lovell Joint VA-DoD Healthcare Center to be one of the early sites. The VA rejected that out of hand, essentially because it would be too hard. That does not say much, by the way, for integration. Subsequently, there has been some discussion of an East Coast site in one of the first several implementation waves, ideally another joint VA-DoD facility. Has any decision been made about that? And if not, when might a decision be made?
Sir, there has been no additional discussions under Secretary Wilkie and Secretary Byrne, DepSec Byrne, on an additional East Coast site. So we have done no further analysis on that for the past 3 months. As far as the North Chicago facility, sir, what we sought to do was align our schedule to the deployment schedule of DoD at those joint facilities. We did not want to cause the people who populate those to incur an additional burden of DoD coming to deploy and then us coming to deploy. That would be an unreasonable and unnecessary change management burden. So we aligned our schedule to when the DoD was deploying to that site. Now, as far as why we went to the Pacific Northwest, as part of our negotiations process, and we got Mr. Dalton sitting here, certain economies of scale, labor efficiencies associated with them being in that region at this point in time led to a lower cost to our taxpayers in that negotiation process.
Well, let me stop you right there and briefly, can you explain why wouldn't DoD and VA deploy at the same time? Why couldn't they?
Well, they could, sir. What we chose to do in our negotiation process is align to what the DoD already had on their schedule. And so their schedule was awarded obviously before ours, so we simply aligned those joint facilities to their schedule. We brought all 13 of those facilities forward in our schedule and are prepared to deploy those out of the normal sequence that region would offer.
Okay, my time has expired. The chair recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dalton, just kind of a couple things before we pick up before we left off. The 2,760 decisions, I think someone mentioned. So is Cerner generating those and then presenting them to the workflow council? Is that how that works?
Yes, we have a process and a tool that we use where we generate those decisions. Now, to be clear, our goal is to be proactive in that decision making. We're not welcoming the councils in and say, hey, what do you think? We're trying to be proactive based on our best practice and our experience across the industry and the globe. Okay,
so are those decisions, is that kind of what sets the agenda of these workflow council meetings? Is that basically what
it is? So
it's been talking about?
Yes, sir. We're doing multiple things. So one is training and education up front, so they have a better understanding of the workflow in the system. Secondly is validation of the decisions that have already been made. So we've done a lot of hard work with the DoD. We'd like to leverage that work. I think that makes sense for the taxpayer. It makes sense for the program going forward. So they're validating those decisions, and then they're doing work around the creation of some of the new capabilities that the VA has that the DoD did not obtain. So they're doing multiple things, and furthermore, they're also participating in content development. So in areas where we know we don't claim perfection, there are areas where we need to work closely with the VA. I've mentioned a few of those. We expect to work with those councils on developing content to help us best meet the needs of the veteran.
Can you give me some examples of how clinicians' feedback in some of those areas shapes the way that Cerner acts going forward?
Sure. I think the couple of the big ones we've talked about, specifically, the VA has a unique population. I don't think that's a secret to anyone here. You've got an older, sicker population. They have unique needs in terms of behavioral health in some of those areas. we expect that the work we do with the VA will help lead us into the future in that area. We expect that we're going to have to work closely together in that area in order to meet the needs of the agency, but we also think that helps make us better commercially and otherwise as well. That would
I
be
guess
one
what I'm
thing.
asking is, how does the information from the clinicians on these councils inform the work you're doing in those areas on the electronic health records?
Sure. So we capture those decisions. We have a tool that we use. So we capture all those decisions. We utilize those decisions to configure our systems. We also utilize those decisions as part of our broader process we use as a company. So our best practices are generated by our clients. So we have a structure where we utilize client feedback from across the globe in order to inform our best practices. The work we're doing with the VA and with the DoD also informs that process.
Okay.
as
Is
well.
there a mechanism for kind of open-ended feedback from the clinicians on these councils to Cerner, or is it all kind of confined within this structure of the decisions you're presenting them?
There's a mechanism for open-ended feedback. From our perspective, we'll consider all of their feedback. We, in the interest of efficiency and getting done, you have to try your best to maintain some level of standard and decision-making.
Sure.
But we're always open to new ideas and innovation, so absolutely.
So, like, if a clinician is sitting on one of these councils, you're saying that they do have the opportunity to raise issues to Cerner that are in front of them right now. They're
Absolutely.
dissatisfied with the way the current system works, and they want to tell you about it so that you can fix it in the new EHR system.
Absolutely, and we capture that and we adjudicate each of those.
Okay. Mr. Short, the site assessments that were conducted over the summer, it sounds like there were a lot of deficiencies in technological readiness, particularly with computers, printers, that kind of thing. Do you agree that it appears that most of the computers are not up to the standard that they need to be?
Yes, sir. Most of them are 5 years old and
Okay.
need to be replaced.
And so what is the plan for that moving forward, or what do you need from us? What do we need to do in the next year or two to address that?
We have an integrated infrastructure readiness plan with OI&T, where we're both working together to maximize the use of their current contracts, so we don't have additional administrative overhead for those. And OI&T is also taking our specification for other replacements that they will do in that area in the future. So when they do a replacement for other facilities before we get there, rather than buying a brand new computer that we would roll to a year later and replace, they'll be using that specification for monitors and that sort of thing.
Okay. Would you agree that that has to be fixed before the go-live time at the 3 test sites?
Yes, sir. Our goal is to be done 6 months ahead of time. The IOC sites may go a little bit shorter than that, but after that, they'll be 6 months before. That way, the technology readiness is completed and for change management before the functional matter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The chair recognizes Dr. Rowe for 5 minutes.
Thank you. And the reason this technology subcommittee was stood up, we're looking at when I went out to Fairchild and DOD, I realized that was not going as well as it should, and we should really pay close attention to it. The other reason that I think all of us have some angst, we're going to have a hearing later today on the disability exams by contract physicians that the VA can't account for. Every one of us has heard from student veterans around the country now from this fiasco about being able to get the schools paid, the per diems paid. There's a technology failure at VA that really is creating real problems when the taxpayer dollars are there. The money's been appropriated, and yet we can't get it dispersed right. So that's why we're doing this, and I think this subcommittee and the full committee are trying to work to make you successful. We want to make you successful. When Mr. Lamb was mentioning about the council, 35% of the VA health care is not provided inside the VA. It's at least 35%. It's provided outside. What are we doing for outside practitioners like myself who, when I went home this past weekend, this past month, before the election, and talked to a dialysis center that can't get any information shared? I'm pairing the VA and that particular dialysis center together so they can work those problems out. They have no way to share data. That's a third of all VA healthcare. Are we doing anything? I noticed you mentioned that Yale and others in the private sector out there working with you. But how are you going to integrate an individual practitioner like me so when I'm seeing a VA patient, I can get that information back to the VA for that patient? And Dr. Krupa, you can probably take that.
Thank you. That is a challenge, definitely. So by going on the Cerner platform, that will allow us to utilize the national systems that are in place for interoperability. We also have included, we have a whole community care council that is looking at all the different workflows for how patients get referred into and out of the VA and all the mechanisms that go into that to make sure that information is exchanged and put into the system, not just as a piece of paper or as an image, but actually the data
But
itself.
how will I, out in my practice, out in Johnson City, Tennessee, how will I be able to access the record? How am I being brought in to access that? Because there are thousands of doctors that out across the country that are doing this. The record at Mountain Home. We're getting right down to the specifics of how is that going to work? Because if that doesn't work, the system doesn't work.
We're working on that, and in terms of, we will be using the interoperability mechanisms that Cerner has in place, the health information exchanges
Okay.
that are already in place, and the care system that's in place, so we'll be able to utilize that. We'll also, again, community care also has different mechanisms that they're currently using in the VISTA system. Some of those may be brought over into our referral process so that there will be more information coming to you when you get our patients, and then a mechanism for you to put that information, send that information
Well, it isn't
back to us.
happening right now. And I wonder, again, I hear that, but will that health information exchange, will I be able to, when I see a patient out like in Spokane, Washington, that's going to go, you're beginning to get that live. There are physicians out there that are going to be seeing patients outside the VA in remote areas. Will they be able to access information through the health? Because if you can't make that step work, this won't work. It's a failure.
Yes,
I guess
Congressman
Mr.
Rowe,
Dalton-
if I may touch on that as well, is that there's two issues. There's one that's technology-based, which is solved. The HIEs, the Commonwealth platform, the Care Quality platform will allow that seamless exchange of information that you speak to. But there also is another piece, which is the information has to be put in. And so that information has to be made accessible by the people on those networks. But we've got the technology piece solved. So let Mr. Dalton touch on that as well about some of their HIE enterprise.
Yeah, so the answer is yes, it's going to happen. It's technically possible and feasible. We're going to use open APIs, FHIR-based integration. We're committed to that contractually. I think the thing that will be powerful for the industry and our commercial partners will be if the DoD and the VA choose a common standard, it actually will move the industry forward because this isn't always a technical issue, it's a standards-based issue. If the power of the DoD and the VA making that choice to move it forward will actually influence the commercial marketplaces. Now, you're talking about a little different issue because this is a VA community provider, but nonetheless, the tools exist through HIEs, through direct exchange. It's a standards issue, generally speaking, in the industry. It really is.
And my time's expired. I yield back. And Mr. Chairman, I want to applaud you and the ranking member for having this, and I would encourage us to do this every 90 days or whatever, so we can keep everyone informed. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We applaud you for the foresight in creating this subcommittee and leading this conversation forward. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Colorado for 5 minutes, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. Mr. Wyndham, you started out, this organization started out in excess of 700 employees, am I correct in that, in terms of your planning, for planning purposes?
Sir, the original projections were 250, augmented by the Booz Allen contractor workforce. They ballooned to about 700 as there was a thought process that we needed to bring more expertise into our portfolio, vice leverage the expertise in the existing OINT VHA portfolios. That is the path we're now choosing. So our numbers look like about 269 and leveraging the expertise in those portfolios I just identified.
And tell me again, what are the practical effects on the project with a much smaller staff?
Well, at the stage we're at now, sir, where our primary focus is IOC, I think a flatter, leaner organization lends for responsiveness, lends for the facilitation of change management, especially when you're given the access that VHA and OINT have given us to their expertise, where there is no, it's a seamless interaction. We need this subject matter expertise on one of our councils, and it's there to support Dr. Krupa. We need this technological data migration expertise, and it's there to support John Short. So having the ability to move people in and out of our portfolio is equally as advantageous as having to bring someone in off the street to orient them on the as-is environment of the VA, wonder whether they understand the Cerner solution. So we believe we've gained a tremendous efficiency by taking that approach.
So part of this is you have access to the respective agencies, or the respective departments that you're serving. Has that mitigated the numbers then?
Absolutely, sir. That makes us seamless. You know, we're direct report to the DepSec. There is an understanding of that. And so and then the commitment by VHA and OINT have been such that we cannot succeed without having a team concept. And that team concept involves, if you will, to use a Navy term, all hands on deck. All hands are on deck for this in support of this. This is a top priority of the Secretary, and people are treating it as such.
So what do you think, how does the culture different organizationally between the failures of the past and what we have today, from your perspective?
Sir, I can speak for the past 20 months. Is that
before that? Obviously, you studied what was there prior to, because if you didn't do it, you didn't do your homework. So tell me, let's go before those 20 months.
Sir, so I could say it in one word: team, a teaming spirit. That's what I know from DOD. That was what I believe to be part of the missing elements, is a teaming spirit. I feel that teaming spirit now. I feel people from all over the VA wanting to be part of OEHRM and wanting to be involved in this mission set. I get calls daily of people who want to join this team.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
We'll now enter a third round of questioning, and I'll begin with that. And we'll pick up right where Mr. Kaufman left off. Mr. Wyndham, in August, the VA submitted a legislative proposal to give the Office of EHR Modernization streamlined hiring and special pay authority. A few weeks later, though, the department retracted that proposal without explanation. Did you decide that you don't need those authorities at all, or did you find another means to accomplish them?
Sir, I think we have another means to accomplish it, which is Title 38 authority rests with VHA. In sitting down with Dr. Stone, who presently leads VHA, he agreed to set up a cost pool, a cost center for us, where he would effectively take the administrative burdens off of our lap. That means we can focus more energy on the implementation, more time on implementation vice the hiring process. Dr. Krupa is part of any hiring panel associated with any personnel brought through that vehicle, and therefore we felt we were able to get the benefits of an efficient hiring process that was already in place, influence who was hired, but not take on the administrative burden of setting up our own from scratch, if you will. So I think that's an important efficiency, and again, it's a byproduct of teamwork. He's taken on that burden administratively for us, but we get to reap the benefits of it from an efficiency standpoint.
All right. My next question is for Mr. Short and Mr. Dalton. The contract says VA will have access to Cerner's data architecture, not just the data in the system, which VA should already own. This came out of the MITRE interoperability assessment, and VA hailed it as a big victory. What is Cerner doing differently to give VA this access, and how is VA using it? We can start with you, Mr. Dalton.
Yeah, so all I can say is we've committed to that. So we're opening that book up to our architecture, what we do and how we do it, not just necessarily the data. That was something we don't normally do with our commercial clients, but we agreed to do it in the best interest of the program with the VA. So that was, I'd say that's a foot that we put forward in the interest of the program. I'd let Mr. Short comment.
Mr. Short, what are we doing with it?
Our architects, engineers, and data scientists have had unfettered access to anything they've requested in this regard with Cerner. We're using that as part of our data migration planning, as well as future planning for all data interaction we'll have with community care partners, DOD, as well as DHS Coast Guard.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wyndham, do you have, would you say that you have operational control of the VHA and OIT employees who support EHRM?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Wyndham, it can be difficult to direct employees who do not actually work for you. Do you consider that to be a risk?
It's one of 200-plus risks we manage, sir, as part of our program oversight efforts. So yes, but I can tell you, when you have the support of the DepSec and then the CIO and VHA, it makes it easier. And then people, sir, there's a genuine commitment to do this. And people wanting to be involved and lending their expertise is something we have not had to struggle with. So we feel we've got multiple forces working in our favor.
Okay. Mr. Wyndham, where are these employees physically located? Are they in D.C., are they in Washington State, or are they elsewhere?
So we've got employees, you know, as a byproduct of the VA's strategies in hiring and supporting us. We've got them dispersed from Austin, Texas, to Seattle, to San Francisco, to here in the D.C. metropolitan area, to Florida. You know, technology has evolved to where we're able to leverage the technological advancements to really close the distance. I believe in having critical and key members here nearby to respond to queries that you may have and other concerns from leadership. But we've been working, you know, with the challenges of distance. We've got a hiring strategy. We've got 131 billets to fill over the next year. And so I can tell you we are looking hard at the locations of those billets because we know where those people are located may enhance their performance. We know we need to have a presence in the Pacific Northwest. That's where IOC is. So we've started that track as well. So I promise you we're looking at the locations of the total workforce to ensure we optimize the placement.
All right. Mr. Wyndham, the scheduling system has been a persistent question. VA is piloting the EPIC scheduling system in Columbus, Ohio, but Cerner provides its own scheduling system as part of the EHR. At one point, VA was considering implementing both systems in different parts of the country. Can you comment on that a little bit further?
Sir, I will tell you that number one is we owe the legislators a response to your queries in December, and that the OINT, OEHRM, and VHA teams, with the oversight of VA leadership, are working through the various course of actions that are being considered in deploying a scheduling system out of sequence of our contract. And so I can tell you we'll be ready to brief you as required as to what our position is at the appropriate time. But I can assure you that.
December?
Pardon me, sir?
In December?
Oh, yes, sir.
So that briefing will come in December?
Yes, sir. I think that decision will have been made by then, and we will be prepared to brief you as appropriate.
So if it doesn't happen in December, which I hope that it will, at what point does this indecision either become a de facto decision or cause major problems for the EHR modernization program?
Sir, we've got a negotiated contract and a negotiated schedule. I will tell you that you have directed us to be ready to brief you in December, so we'll be ready in December to brief you.
Okay, very good. My last question. I'm the last man standing. My
Yes,
time has
sir.
expired, but I'm going to ask one more question, if you don't mind. To go back to the initial questioning with you, Mr. Wyndham, I'm still struggling with the budget explanation a little bit. The tangible parts of the project, like your spending to date and the infrastructure, are running below estimate. But nonetheless, we have the bottom line going up. It seems to be driven by intangibles and costs that come into play years from now. We already have the cost estimate going in the wrong direction and fuzzy explanations as to why. My colleagues and I need and demand better answers. So please expect a document request for the financial records and basis of these estimates. Can you comment any further on maybe some of those,
Sir,
as you reflected on those earlier?
Sir, I will go, and I'll be prepared to come to sit down with your staff as appropriate to give them a full laydown. I'll bring my chief financial officer and give you a full laydown. We've only obligated $28 million to date in FY19, and so I look forward to providing additional clarity to your staff for hopefully conveyance to you. And if you want me to come in, I gladly will. So I'll take that as a look-up, sir, and come in and brief you in great detail.
Thank you very much. And in closing, thank you to the witnesses for your testimony. If there are no further questions, then the panel is now excused. As final closing comments, this morning we have examined many of the major questions that would determine the course of the EHRM program. The next big development should be VA and DoD determining how best to organize their joint management. They have to be close enough to act in concert, while flexible enough to address their unique requirements. The subcommittee has urged both leadership teams to communicate their thinking as early as possible. It is my sincere hope and expectation that this subcommittee will continue in the next Congress. And I want to thank Ranking Member Lamb for his willingness to volunteer for this unconventional assignment. We hit the ground running, and we are going to run through the tape. In my opinion, on this issue, one way to measure our success is in our oversight responsibilities is if the party composition changes and no one can tell the difference. That is not to say things won't get more difficult. On the contrary, there is every indication that they probably will. But I am committed to tackling the challenges transparently and firmly grounded in reality. So thank you all again for your participation in today's hearing. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material. Without objection, so ordered. This hearing is adjourned.